Thousands of years ago, if you needed a light, this was your go-to tool to make fire. Have I sparked your interest? If so, stay right here to find out more.
How and when did humans first make fire? This is the University of the Netherlands.
When's the last time you made a fire? And I don't mean lighting a candle or the stove with a lighter or some matches, because that's cheating. But made an actual fire from scratch. Maybe you tried making fire as a kid with a magnifying glass, or by rubbing two sticks together like they do in cartoons. Regardless of your early successes, or lack thereof, humans have been making fire for thousands of years. Nowadays, however, despite being just as dependent on fire as ever in our day-to-day lives, most of the fire we use is hidden away in our furnace, or in our car engines, or in faraway power plants. But when did humans first start making fire, and how did they do it? As an archaeologist interested in early pyrotechnology, I try to answer this very question. To do so, I look at the tools used by Neanderthals, a distinct group of humans that lived in Europe and Western Asia roughly 400,000 years ago until approximately 40,000 years ago during a period we call the Middle Paleolithic. They even lived briefly alongside the first early modern humans, or Homo sapiens, that arrived from Africa around 50,000 years ago, the only human species still walking this planet today. And it has long been believed by some that fire making was a technology exclusively possessed by early modern humans. But in this lecture, I'll tell you how I discovered strong evidence that Neanderthals could make fire as well. Before we get into the fire making, let's first talk a bit about fire use. Early humans have been using fire long before Neanderthals. When we find traces of fire at archaeological sites where Neanderthals or earlier hominin species lived, it doesn't necessarily mean that they were making fire at will. Early members of our genus would have had to access natural wildfires typically ignited by lightning strikes or, in some areas, by volcanoes. They could have harvested the flames and then carried the fire with them to their cave or to their campsite. After that, it would have only been a matter of maintaining and transporting and using their fire for as long as they needed it, or until it was lost, perhaps after getting caught in a rainstorm. So at this stage, early humans were still reliant on nature to give them a light. It wasn't until much later that particularly crafty, or lucky, members of our lineage figured out how to make fire for themselves. And this is where my research comes in. Making fire in the Paleolithic would have been limited to two basic methods, wood-on-wood friction and stone-on-stone percussion, and it currently remains unknown which method came first. As the name suggests, the first method utilizes two pieces of wood, where one is rapidly and forcefully applied to the other using either a drilling motion or a rubbing motion to create enough friction heat to ignite wood powder produced during the process. Percussive firemaking, on the other hand, involves striking two stones together to create sparks, and I'll come back to this more in a moment. For my purposes, the biggest problem with the wood friction method is preservation. Like a dead tree in the forest, wooden tools tend to rot away and disappear relatively quickly once discarded, which is why we rarely find them at archaeological sites. A second problem is that once a piece of wood is used, say as a fire drill, once it reaches the end of its use life, it's just an extra piece of firewood that can be tossed onto the campfire. So even if it happened to be the earliest method used, there's still virtually no evidence for friction firemaking in the archaeological record until relatively recently. This is why my research focuses on percussive firemaking. Let's go into this in a bit more detail right here in the lab. Percussive firemaking specifically involves making sparks by striking a flint tool together with a piece of pyrite, the mineral known as fool's gold. Pyrite is composed of iron disulfide, and this combination of iron and sulfur creates a mineral that can produce a long-lasting spark when struck with another rock or mineral of similar or greater hardness. And pyrite is actually quite hard, coming in at a 6.5 on the Mohs scale of hardness, with diamond being the hardest at 10. So you need a relatively hard material to strike or rub against the pyrite to forcefully dislodge the tiny fragments that become incandescent and turn into sparks. It was then a happy coincidence for prehistoric peoples that they generally turned to materials like flint to make their stone tools. Flint is usually comprised of the mineral quartz, which has a hardness of around 7. so just a bit harder than pyrite, making it the ideal material for use as a strike-a-light. The Neanderthals probably could have used just any old piece of flint to make fire, and they likely did. But based on my findings, it seems that at least some later groups of Neanderthals preferred to use the same tools to make fire that they used for nearly everything else at that time. And this was the hand axe. Hand axes are also known as bifaces or bifacial tools, because flakes were removed from both sides of the flint blank to produce these large cutting tools. And it's clear Neanderthals from this period used these tools for many different tasks, whether it be as a knife for butchering animals, for woodworking, for scraping hides, and even occasionally using the flat side of a hand axe as a hammer to shape and sharpen other hand axes. You could say that they were the Swiss Army knives of the Paleolithic. And not only were they multifunctional, but they also had relatively long use lives compared to simple single-use flake tools. They were carried from place to place, used, resharpened, and used again and again until finally being discarded once a suitable replacement had been made. Together, their flexibility of use and long use lives make hand axes high-probability targets in my search for early fire makers, which is why I chose to focus on these tools for this research. So now that we have assembled our Middle Paleolithic fire-making kit, let me show you how it works. But not here. I'd feel a bit bad smoking out the camera guy or potentially burning down the studio, so let's step outside, shall we? All right, well, we have a perfect day for making fire. Cold, bit breezy, so a fire is going to be real nice for us. So I'm going to show you how to make fire with the Neanderthal method. So the first thing that we're going to do is I'm going to get a piece of tinder fungus. Now here, this is a type of fungus called hoof fungus. Fomus fomentarius is its Latin name. And you find it growing on trees when you're walking through the forest. And it's a really good tinder for capturing sparks using the percussive fire-making method. And the first thing I'll do is I'll be scraping some of this tinder into a nice fluffy mass that will be what I capture my spark in once I start making sparks. That should be enough. The next thing I'll need is a piece of manganese dioxide. Manganese dioxide is this mineral that if you powder it and put it on your tinder, it will lower the ignition temperature by about 100 degrees Celsius, so it makes your tinder much more effective. So I'll scrape some of that with my biface, sort of like you would Parmesan cheese over your pasta. And once I have my tinder put together, I'm going to grab from my piece of pyrite. And this is the mineral that's going to give you those sparks that you need to get the fire going. And I'm going to take that and I'm going to strike it against the flat side of the biface to get the sparks. This is where the luck element comes in. And hopefully soon after that, we will have captured a spark. I think we got it. Just want to give it a little time to make sure that little ember there gets really well established. It's got some nice smoke now. Sit right here, a bird's nest. Oh God. Don't worry, I dropped it, but I still got it. And there you have it. Woo, getting hot. So that's how you make fire like a Neanderthal. So now you know that it's possible to make fire using a flint hand axe, a piece of pyrite, some tinder, and a dash of manganese dioxide to help things along. But how do we know that Neanderthals were using a similar technique tens of thousands of years ago? For this, we turn to the complementary fields of experimental archaeology and Useware analysis. As the name suggests, experimental archaeologists perform experiments using stone tools to work different types of raw materials in an effort to replicate the ways we think Neanderthals might have also done. So if we take our experimental hand axe here and use it to cut, scrape, chop, or bash another material, it'll leave behind distinctive traces on the surface of the flint that we can observe under a microscope. The variable nature of these traces is related to the composition and relative hardness of the material being worked, as well as to the motions employed when using the tool. We then compare the traces we created in our experiments to traces we find on tools recovered from Neanderthal sites to try to gain new insights into how they were using their tools. This process is called Useware analysis. So for my research, I wanted to see if the traces produced during my fire-making experiments were similar to the traces observed on ancient hand axes that I think might have been used by Neanderthals as strike-a-lights. So I went to France to look at hand axes from a number of different late Middle Paleolithic archaeological sites dating to around 50,000 years ago. And guess what? We were able to identify a suite of mineral traces on the flat sides of dozens of tools that looked very similar to those produced during my fire-making experiments. Among the traces that we could often observe with the naked eye include localized crushing and rounding of these flake scar ridges here, but also isolated clusters of C-shaped percussion marks, like those visible in the upper left photo. You'll notice that all of these little C's open towards the tip of the tool, indicating the Neanderthal used the same low-angle, oblique percussive motion when striking the hand axe with the pyrite, likely with the tip pointed downwards towards the tinder. If he or she were striking the hand axe straight on, as opposed to at an angle, the percussive marks would be full circles. In the image on the upper right, you can see that I was able to reproduce similar percussion marks on an experimental hand axe that I used to make fire. So when you place the hand axe under a microscope, you'll find zones of bright mineral polish containing densely packed clusters of parallel to subparallel scratches, or as we would call them, striations. If you compare these archaeological traces to those produced experimentally, you'll find they are nearly a perfect match. And notice how the orientation of the striations in the lower left photo corresponds exactly to the directionality of the C-shaped percussion marks, which tells us that they are directly related to one another. Another important point I'd like to mention is that the striations observed on the archaeological hand axes I analyzed are nearly always oriented roughly parallel to the long axis of the tools, suggesting they were indeed made by Neanderthals using a similar purposeful technique. If these traces were produced accidentally or by natural processes, then we would expect the striations to be sort of randomly oriented. And finally, it's interesting to note that given the often heavy nature of the percussive fire-making process, it's quite logical that Neanderthals used the flat sides of their hand axes for this task instead of the edges. No sense in dulling up the edges of your primary cutting tool if you still have an animal carcass that needs butchering. So it seems that these French Neanderthals clearly recognized the utility of hand axes as potential fire-making tools by at least 50,000 years ago, making these the oldest convincing evidence for this technology identified so far. But this surely isn't the last word on the matter. Now, I have spent a lot of time looking for tools with fire-making traces. You have to imagine that when an archaeological site is excavated, they dig up potentially tens of thousands of flint artifacts that are stored in museums and research institutions all over the world. So I've had to sift through literally thousands and thousands of objects, placing the interesting ones under the microscope to see if any fire-making traces are indeed present. And it's definitely not the most exciting task, especially if you don't find anything. So I hope that in the future, more archaeologists will become familiar with this research and know what traces to look out for. So this brings us back to the question we began with. How and when did humans first make fire? Well, we still don't really know for sure, unfortunately. While my research suggests that at least some Neanderthals tromping around France 50,000 years ago were occasionally striking pyrite against the flat sides of their hand axes to start fire, this is only the earliest instance of this practice that we know of. It doesn't mean that there weren't other groups of hominins using this method to make fire, or other techniques like wood-on-wood friction. But so far we haven't found any evidence for this. In the meantime, I hope that fire-making tools will soon become increasingly more common in the Paleolithic archaeological record as other researchers become better able to recognize the telltale traces of fire-making. This will surely make my job a whole lot easier. Thank you very much for listening.